Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine on ESPN Radio 1230. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. A lovely Labor Day, and everybody getting together and having cookouts and, chips and hot dogs and tofu if you're into that kind of thing, or whatever, tofurkey. But we're going to talk about sports because, it is Labor Day, and college football got kicked off over the weekend, actually starting Thursday for us around here locally with the Hilltoppers playing Central Arkansas. And then Kentucky played Toledo on Saturday, and Louisville plays Notre Dame tonight. Strangely enough, if you were to look at the three schedules or the three openers, you would think that Louisville has the toughest game.
No question. They had the toughest game last year too. They opened up with Alabama.
Yeah, and so they do have the toughest game. But then again, if you look at the results of the WKU versus Central Arkansas and Kentucky beat Toledo, but they proved to be tough opponents as well.
They did. I hope the game is close tonight with Notre Dame. I've got my doubts.
Well, let's start off with the Hilltoppers. They were up 14 in the fourth quarter, gave up 21 unanswered, lost 35-28 in their home opener against a FCS school for the second consecutive year, despite having a new head coach in Tyson Helton.
And paid out $350,000. Yeah. That's what it was, wasn't it? $350,000?
Yeah, I think it was $350,000. There were people kind of pointing out that they paid to get beat at home.
Yeah. They're not the only one that this weekend that paid to get beat at home.
Oh no, they were. Tennessee was a victim of such things.
That's correct.
There were several schools that are supposed to be the high-profile programs and that kind of stuff. At least on paper, they are, but on the field, they were not. They were low-profile, as a matter of fact.
It's hard to believe that you would pay. That's just mind-boggling to me. Even for Western is paying that much money, $350,000 to get somebody to come play. That just doesn't. That's mind-boggling to me because the game itself could not have generated that much money. So they've got to take it from another guaranteed game that they're going to get.
Yeah.
To pay that.
Yeah, the Ohio State and the Alabama down the road games.
That's correct. But that's just mind-boggling to pay that much money to get people to play.
One of the things about that game, the crowd was pretty thin on Thursday night.
Announced 17,000. That's what they put in the paper. Announced. They put announced before it. I don't know if it's 17 or not. They had great weather too. Yeah,
it was a beautiful night, and I'm not saying the crowd was not good. I'm just saying
it wasn't full.
Yeah, it wasn't full, and it just. I thought the energy was pretty decent among the students I saw there.
Yeah.
But, it's hard. I think those night games on Thursday are just hard to get people to come to. Kickoff is at 6:30. I don't know. Maybe people just have other things they want to do. I just think those non-traditional days for college football are not a positive for fan attendance. That may be great for TV. I don't know.
Right. Well, you're generally on Thursday night the only game on TV.
Yeah.
I don't know if Western got that bump or not, to be perfectly honest with you. But,
yeah.
About the game, that's a tough loss. I mean, it was, it's just, if you want to be honest, it's kind of hard to see the Toppers winning 5 games if you don't count that one as a win.
Right.
That's for any type of winning record, you would think that's you got to get that one.
Yeah.
And there's a couple more on the schedule that you just have to win, and that puts them in a. And what it does too is it doesn't kill the enthusiasm, but it certainly doesn't help. And I do think Coach Helton's done a good job.
Yeah,
I think the energy level is better. I think it's a fresh start, and offensively they played better than last couple of years teams.
Right.
They had 448 yards total offense and over 300 in the air, and that part was better. But saying that, to lose to Central Arkansas and to give up 21 points in the last quarter, get outscored 21-0 at home, that's a tough pill to swallow. And I guess what's confusing about it is the strength of the team coming into the year is supposed to be the defense.
Yeah.
In fact, in a move that most coaches don't make, the new coach, Coach Helton, rehired the defensive coordinator from the previous staff.
Yeah, basically the whole defensive
That's correct.
staff.
So they kept the staff together for that continuity and everything. And I guess that's the disappointing part, to give up that many points at home when they had a not a commanding lead, but they had a good lead.
Yeah,
is disappointing. I wouldn't say it's deflating, but it's that's I think that's disappointing to several people.
One of the things, there are a couple of things about that kind of strike me. One is we got used to seeing WKU with explosive offensive talent.
Yes.
They do not have that right now.
They do not.
And so
they do not have a quarterback that's a Brandon Daugherty or Mike White. They do not have a Taquan Taylor. Taquan Taylor receiver. Yeah. They don't have a NFL caliber tight end. It doesn't appear like right now.
Yeah.
Or an offensive lineman like they've had drafted. They are missing those types of game-changing talents. Now, they don't come through Western all the time.
No.
They just so happen to come during Jeff Brom's time.
Yeah, we kind of got spoiled with the talent coming through.
And so that's not there right now, and it's going to take, in fairness to Coach Helton, it's going to take he's got to recruit.
Yeah.
Now, we'll say he seems to me, my gut tells me he could be a good recruiter.
Yeah,
he's going to have a system that's going to be very popular, I think, to quarterbacks and B receivers.
Yep.
It's going to be very, very quarterback friendly, and I think over time that will change. But the immediate dividends of maybe 5 or 6 wins, I don't know. But I do think they're going to play a more exciting brand of football, and I think he's committed to do that.
Well, and also my secondary point to the fact that they don't have that offensive talent is when you play a style that he wants to play, you leave your defense more exposed because they're going to wind up a lot of times on the field more because you're throwing it. If you're not scoring, if you're not scoring, you're not keeping the ball long enough. Your defense is going to wind up on the field more, and they weren't scoring. I mean, after they scored those initial 21 points and then they got the other touchdown, I mean, they missed a field goal that probably would have sealed the game for them.
Their field goal kicker was suspended, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So they missed that field goal that probably would have sealed the game for them. Then you get in the fourth quarter, even though your defense is probably the best part of your team.
But you can't give up 21 now.
No.
And they gave up 200 and something to one receiver. And
they couldn't cover that dude. He should have been at Western.
That was the most frustrating play.
Right.
And I know he wants to be aggressive on defense, and I read his comments as well. He took a lot of the responsibility. He wants to be aggressive on defense. And I think it's fair. I also think he's covering up a little bit for the defense.
Yeah.
Because you do want to be, and oftentimes when you're in the lead, you can be more aggressive in terms of your blitz. Because if you know the other team is passing, you can really blitz and things like that. But you still got to cover.
Right.
And the one thing that you do not want to give up, especially when you've got the lead, you don't want to give up big plays over the top.
Yeah.
And they did.
Well, and so going back to what you were saying, though, about the type of offense they're going to play is going to be attractive to quarterbacks, going to be attractive to receivers. Also, I think an aggressive defense is attractive to talent as well that wants to get out there and play, with their ears pinned back and play a certain way. That's a high-risk, high-reward style on both sides of the ball if it works. And when you have the talent, you can make it work. And the biggest problem is not just the offensive talent, but they probably got some defensive talent issues. I mean, look, that guy made the quarterback for Central Arkansas and that receiver made WKU's defensive backs look like they shouldn't be playing on the Division I level, to be honest.
Yeah, gave up a lot of yards to one receiver.
Yeah, they did.
Over 200.
Yeah.
With the lead, right.
I
keep saying it, with the lead.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is like if you're a Hilltoppers fan, what you're looking at is a lot of people walked away from that disappointed. They were grumbling, saying, I thought it was going to be something new, and we did the same thing last year, blah, blah, blah. But I think it is new.
I do, too.
We just got to wait to see what the payout is.
I think I've got a good feeling. I like him. I think I like his style. I like his demeanor.
Yeah.
It's just this year will be will be a struggle at times.
Yeah.
They lost when they should have won. Maybe they can win when that they're not expected to. Their first 3 games, I think the game Saturday at FIU will be a tough for them.
Oh, yeah.
But then they have Louisville on a neutral field. Who knows? I mean, Louisville is probably the weakest Louisville team's been in years.
Mm-hmm.
Louisville will not dominate them. Louisville will be a favorite.
Oh, yeah.
But that maybe they can get it back on that one.
Here's one thing I was going to say about the comparison between former coach Mike Sanford and Tyson Helton, just off the top. The last 2 years, I came to believe that Sanford did not trust his system or what he wanted to do.
Okay.
Like, he would make changes. He would second guess himself. I don't know him personally. I didn't ask him these questions, but I'm just saying the way the team performed, the different things, it didn't seem like they had a consistent plan.
Right.
Helton will stick with the plan.
I agree.
And
he's got a system. He's going to recruit to it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and I think he knows. For the most part, what people around here want to see too.
Yeah.
They were spoiled on Jeff Brom, and he was part of that staff.
Yeah.
And it's I don't care what people say about Western football, and there's a lot of people who love Western football. It's not an easy ticket to sell.
No, it's not.
Even with Jeff Brom, it was not an easy ticket, and the only way that what sells is excitement there.
Yep. On to possible excitement. So Stoops kept telling us Toledo was good. So here's the question. Is Toledo that good, or is Kentucky – I mean, they ended up winning the game. They won by a touchdown, a little more.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's I guess that's a solid win. But if you're an SEC school, that's not necessarily a solid win.
I think
that makes sense.
Well, I think Toledo was I think they were good.
Yeah.
I think Toledo will probably end up winning 8 or 9 games if their quarterback comes back. That's probably the biggest. That would be the one area that would that I would be most concerned of with Kentucky. I thought overall Kentucky played pretty well. I mean, Terry Wilson had he threw for 246 yards. They got good play from several of their receivers, and their running backs were fine. But I will say, until the quarterback got knocked out. And he got knocked out by an unsportsmanlike contact, spearing as a targeting call.
Yeah.
He got knocked out in the third quarter. When he got knocked out, the game was pretty much dead even, or I think Kentucky may have been up a touchdown.
Yeah.
Because he was wearing them out in the first half.
Right.
And their backup quarterback at Toledo would be about what you think about a backup quarterback at Toledo, not near the level at the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
So I think Kentucky has to be. If I'm Kentucky, I'm thrilled because they got a win against, I think, a decent team, and offensively, which was the worry, they played pretty well. Defensively, they lost all their secondary, and they struggled at times.
Mm-hmm.
But all Kentucky needs to do is look around at their schedule, and all of a sudden, their schedule's not near as hard as people think, because
right.
The SEC. You take away Alabama, which Kentucky doesn't play. You take away Auburn, which Kentucky doesn't play. Then you throw Texas A&M, Kentucky doesn't play. Georgia, they do play.
Mm-hmm.
But Tennessee looked atrocious.
Oh, yeah.
South Carolina gave up another 2-touchdown lead in the second half, loses again.
Uh-huh.
Vanderbilt didn't look too inspiring to me. Louisville's not very good, and I think all of a sudden, when people were thinking, can Kentucky win 6 or 7? Well, I think 8 to 9 may be back in play now.
Yeah, it does certainly appear that the SEC East is not that great outside of Georgia at the moment.
I don't even know who's in it. Georgia is, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've been the head of the SEC East.
Right. Missouri got beat by
Wyoming. Yeah.
Arkansas barely beat Portland State.
Yeah, 20-13.
So I mean,
there was nothing inspiring outside of Georgia's mollywhopping of Vanderbilt, and I guess basically Kentucky's win. I mean, in the SEC East, those were the 2 most impressive games.
That's correct. So if I'm Kentucky, I'm actually relieved we beat Toledo because there was a lot. Now I don't know how much of that was Kentucky propaganda or what.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of talk in the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to that Toledo was a dangerous opponent.
Yeah.
And the MAC conference generally plays well.
Oh, yeah.
And Toledo has the last, I think, 10 years has had a really solid run, and I really liked their quarterback. Their tailback was a transfer from UK.
Mm-hmm.
Transferred last year. I mean, Benny Snell was there. We were going to get a lot of transfer 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought he was good. So I would consider it overall pretty good. I'm still not sold on their quarterback. I know he was very efficient. 240-something yards and made some big throws. But, boy, I watched most of that game. He also made some throws. It's just like how do you, I mean, he when he misses, he misses.
Yeah,
I'll say that. But they win with him.
Yeah,
and with their schedule, I think they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I would say that for the most part, their defense is. You can tell they've lost a lot of pieces in the last year. I mean, so that's something that Stoops and them are going to have to figure out.
But they're athletic, though. I mean,
they are athletic.
They'll get better as year goes on.
That's right. I mean, I wouldn't look at that first game results against Toledo and say their defense is not good.
And they got a very winnable game this Saturday. They put them 2-0.
Yeah.
Another home game, I believe, against a team they shouldn't lose to.
Yeah.
And then I think they have Florida coming up for it. They always play Florida early.
Yeah, and that's going to be curious, too, because, I mean, Florida actually, they beat Miami, and they're ranked number 8.
Miami looked horrible.
Yeah, that game was just ugly. That was an ugly game.
Yeah, it looked like two teams that played too early.
Yeah, and so I don't know that you can you're talking about that Florida game down the road. I don't know that you know what kind of team Florida is.
I agree with that.
So, Kentucky,
I know they're well coached.
Yeah, I'd say Dan Mullen does a good job. But anyway, that's going to be pretty critical. And then, of course, like I said, tonight, Louisville, Notre Dame. I'm guessing for this game, what we're trying to figure out is what has Satterfield managed to accomplish in the last, 8 months?
Well, it's less talent at Louisville than they've had in 15 years.
Yeah.
The problem last year is not only were they not as talented as they've been in the past, they flat out quit playing. And they, defensively was atrocious. They had terrible quarterback play.
Yeah.
And it looked like just a revolt against the whole coaching staff.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that happening now.
Mm-hmm.
I think Satterfield has brought – not only did he bring order, but I think he's tried to build relationship with players and so forth.
Yeah.
The problem that happens in football, though, is we've talked about it 1,000 times. Everybody – and, James, you know it more than anybody because you see it on TV, too. Everybody – before their first game talks about how hard everybody's working and how together they are. It don't matter how bad the last season is. Everything's changed. We got better leadership. I mean, it's clockwork. You never ever hear a player or a coach talk about, well, we're not practicing very good.
Yeah.
I don't think we're as good. Our leadership is as good as it was. They never say that.
No.
Never. And what happens in football, if you get hit in the mouth the first couple of weeks, that really tests you.
Yeah,
because football is only fun kind of when you win. It's not
moral victories aren't worth it in football.
It's really not, and it seems like players turn on each other quicker in football.
Yeah.
And become more unhappy than in other sports. So we'll see, with Coach Satterfield. This is now the thing is he's not a lame duck coach.
Yeah,
and I really think the players last year. I think the internet and social media played into part of what was going on in Louisville with Coach Petrino because it turned quick and it turned awful negative. And Petrino, who was not the AD's coach, he was not. I mean, he was the previous AD.
Yeah, and
I think that had a lot to do with things turning. That won't happen with Satterfield. They're locked in. He's got a long contract. He's the guy. And from a Louisville perspective, can they be competitive this year? If they win 4-5, that'd be a great year, even though the ACC's not that strong either. But will they be competitive?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. I don't think they have any chance in the world to beat Notre Dame. But will they compete and put on and act, at least be classy in terms of they're going to play hard and so forth?
To be honest with you, there's a game on the schedule that they cannot afford to lose. And that's that neutral site WKU game. That's one.
They got to win. Then after Notre Dame, they got to. Before that, in less than 5 days, because the Notre Dame game's Monday night. They play Eastern Saturday.
Yeah.
So they got to beat.
They got two games in a row that they really cannot lose.
That's correct. And how prepared will they be for Eastern?
Yeah.
Coming off a Monday night national television game against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Really, they have no shot against Notre Dame. But it's national TV, and it's big in recruiting.
Yep.
So in a warped way, it's really important. Not that they don't have to win, but you got to show the world, your recruits, that this is big time football and we're competing. At least put a brand on that you can recruit.
Yeah.
That game is important for that. Saturday is important. The Eastern game is if you're going to win 4 or 5 games, you got to beat Eastern, just like we said with Western. You got to beat Eastern.
Yeah, and you can't lose those games because, like you said, I mean, the Notre Dame game is critical for recruiting. Those other 2 games are critical to show that that your talent level is good enough to compete.
That's correct. And you got to beat Eastern and Western from Lowe's perspective, just like Western has to beat Central Arkansas.
That's right. This is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
John, the Barren County Trojans, week off after beating up on Metcalfe County, came back, hosted Woodford County, scored first, and then the rest of the game belonged to Woodford. Final was 37-7. And I think one of the things that kind of struck me when I saw them play Metcalfe was they have more. Barren County has more talent this year than they've probably had in a long time, speed-wise especially. But one of the things that did concern me coming out of that Metcalfe County game was the run defense, especially between the tackles. They struggled to deal with Metcalfe's run game in the first half especially. I think they wore Metcalfe out in the second half.
They did. I agree.
That didn't really play as big a part in the second half, but there was a sign there for anybody looking on film to say, well, maybe we can take advantage of that. And that's basically what Woodford did. They gave it to their fullback, Rice, and he ran it up the middle quite a bit. And just kind of, and I would guess Woodford's offense kind of plays off that anyway. That would be the style, but
it's what Greenwood's run the last so many years. It's that
basically
triple veer offense. So the fullback's the key.
Yeah,
and we had no answer.
Yeah, and that was what, like I said, coming out of the Metcalfe County game, if there was anything that I would have been concerned about as coaches at Barren County, being like, all right, we're going to have to figure out how to deal with this run. And they didn't have the answers against Woodford. I don't know how many teams they'll see all year who will have a fullback. That guy was tough. I mean, he was a strong runner, and he was actually he was fairly nimble too.
He was, but he only had 30 yards the week before.
Well,
14 carries against Lincoln County.
I'm guessing Lincoln has some hog mollies in the middle who are a little better at dealing with that.
Yeah, it must. It was. I think if you're a Barren County person, if I'm on a coaching staff, I think you're disappointed. I know you're disappointed.
Yeah.
I didn't know how the game would go.
Mm-hmm.
Woodford County was only 8-37 in their last 5 years.
Yeah. With
the same coach.
Yeah.
0-11 2 years ago.
Yep.
Now I will say when they warmed up, they didn't look like an 8-37 team. I mean, they have some athletes on the outside. They have enough size. I mean, they look like a legitimate 5A football team. They had a lot of kids out and so forth. So they look the part.
Right.
But so I didn't know how it was going to go. I never thought we'd get blown out.
No.
I thought it'd be close, and but I guess what I'm surprised about is the score, and it wasn't competitive all that much once it got into the third quarter. I mean, Woodford, we don't keep time of possession. They had to have had it close to 65% of the game.
Yeah,
because they kept the ball on the ground and did not throw it very much at all, and just totally. I think they frustrated our kids too. I don't mean this in the wrong way, but the Metcalfe County game, it was almost too easy for us.
Yeah,
nothing went wrong,
right.
And it's just big play after big play, and we just came out and just kind of rolled through over Metcalfe and kind of wore them down too, and. The first, and I don't think we handled very well adversity. I mean, Holloway scored the second time he got it, went on a 70-yard scamper.
Yeah,
but he also had five carries of losses of probably about 25, 30 yards. And we didn't have any of that the week before.
Right.
And I think we were frustrated, what I could tell, defensively because we couldn't stop them.
Mm-hmm.
And then offensively, outside of that one big play, and Tyler Bush had a few good runs, we really didn't do much.
Well, one of the things, in a stranger sort of way, maybe Holloway hitting that 70-yard run was a negative for the rest of the game because I was over on the Barren County sideline at that point, and they were pretty excited, and they should have been, and that kind of stuff. But you're right; they didn't face any adversity against Metcalfe County. Really, they knew they were faster. They knew they were probably going to be able to wear them out, and maybe they thought when they hit that touchdown early, they thought, well, here we go, we're going to be able to do this again. And the other thing that was interesting, Woodford's first drive, I think they threw the ball 3 times. Two out
of the first 3 were throws.
And so it's like they came out and did that, and then they went back, I guess, to what they do. I mean, maybe that was just a trick first drive, or they were trying to hit a big play early. Maybe that's what they were trying to do, was get a big pass play. But then they just came back and said, well, we're just going to do what we do, and they did it well.
Yeah, they ran the fullback, or they faked it to the fullback, and went, the quarterback capped it for the most part himself. And we just couldn't stop it. I don't know what else to say, but defensively we never really got control of the game.
Yeah.
And offensively we got so much out of routine, I guess you could say, that never got going either.
Yeah. And so I think one thing out of this is that maybe that loss is a positive in this way. Barren County is a building program. It's not at the pinnacle of where it needs to be yet. So the positive out of this has to be that they have seen this adversity, and the coaching staff can get the players together and say, we are different. We have more talent. We're more capable of winning games. We've got to learn how to compete at a certain level if we want to win games, though.
Right, and the maybe it's the good and the bad is you can talk all you want to about toughness.
Yeah, right.
But talk only works so much.
Yeah.
They've got their next 3 games is Adair, Monroe, and Hancock.
Yeah.
3, I would argue, very winnable games.
Yeah.
In fact, they should be heavy favored against Adair and Hancock. Again, Monroe will be more of a toss-up, but I still think Barren may be the favorite.
Yeah.
So they can. So in terms of overcoming, I don't know if they're going to be put in that spot again until Greenwood.
Right.
And so if Barren wants to have a successful year, I think these next 3 are critical.
Mm-hmm.
Adair, Monroe, Hancock, because then it's Greenwood, and now Greenwood doesn't look like Greenwood looks pretty darn good.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, they've only scored about 100 points in 2 games, knocking off Franklin and Warren Central.
Right.
And then district play, Central Hardin, North Hardin, and Meade all won last week.
Yeah. Meade beat Franklin. North Hardin beat Elizabethtown,
who's really good, and Central Hardin wore out John Hardin, who's traditionally is good.
Yeah.
Those are 4 tough games in a row.
Right. And that's
and then you get the playoffs, you're playing one of them again.
Right. Yeah, you are. So yeah, I mean, it's the positive of the situation, like I said, is that we
are better. I think we are. I think you're right. I think there is more talent.
Yeah.
I think there is more better team speed. There's no question about that. But we ran in a team that's Woodford has the same. Maybe
they were very similar teams.
Very similar.
Talent-wise,
that's correct.
Really looked around the
I
field.
just think we kind of. I think Coach Jackson mentioned he felt like in the second half we kind of quit. I think when that is said, they quit. When players do that, it's more of a mental deal.
Yeah,
mentally kind of give up on things. When things starting to spiral, and they still played hard.
Yeah,
but mentally, that's tough things sometimes. It's at all levels. It's not high school, but in high school, it's also tough on kids too. To when things start to spiral, can you get it back? And we did not at all.
Well, and that goes back to it's a building program. So in order to get to the next level, yes, you can increase the talent on your team, but then you also have to increase the mental toughness on your team. And some players are going to have to in practice this week, I would imagine the test is which players are recovering from that game and focused on the next game, and which ones are living in the past of that game. And that's going to be a question that the coaching staff's probably going to have to answer. I don't know if that means other people wind up on the field versus some who are out there, because they are demonstrating the ability to wipe that clean and move on. But that may be the case. I would be surprised if there's not some challenges to who's on the defense.
And what I've seen at coaching, you won't know who has grown from that until you're put back in that spot again.
Yeah.
Because if you go out and you beat somebody the next game 50-0, you still don't know.
Right, yeah.
You don't know, because everybody likes to play any sport when things are going your way.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun and it's easy.
Right. Yeah.
You don't know the true character of a person or a team until they do face it.
And even though they should beat Adair pretty handily.
Been 0-2 last 2 years.
Yeah.
In fact, Adair's only win last year was 20-19 over Barren.
Yeah, so even though Barren should beat Adair, actually this is a pretty good test for him on a mental stage, because Adair has won the last 2 years when really Barren should have beaten them those 2 times too.
You would probably so.
Yep, especially last year.
That's right.
But on the mental toughness side and getting in wins too easy, we have the Glasgow Scotties. And now LaRue, I thought
that was a challenge. That was a good win. Yeah.
That was a good test. Russellville was not. I mean,
Russellville is as down as they've been in since I've been at Barren, 25
probably.
years. I don't remember them this. I mean, they were down 40-something to nothing at halftime.
Yeah, I think the running clock was after the first quarter. I think it was 36-0.
And what I've heard, through several people, it was just Glasgow dominate them. It was not competitive at all.
And this goes back to talking to Jeff Gorman about last season. That's kind of a bad thing. I mean, the LaRue County game was a good test, but it's a bad thing to have a team on your schedule that traditionally is a good program and not right now.
Nope.
Because there are things that Glasgow will have to work out, because, I mean, they're a team with an objective beyond just playing in their district and beyond just playing the first couple of rounds of the playoffs. They're a team that consistently has an objective, regional finals and that kind of stuff. And in order to get there, once again, they're going to have to make sure they can run the ball, throw the ball, defend the things they need to defend.
I mean, balance.
Yeah, they're going to have balance. And right now, a team like Russellville's not providing the challenge enough to make them be balanced.
No, not at all. And they scheduled them 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a 2-year deal. And I don't know if I'm sure they did not think Russellville would be that bad.
I mean, who would think so?
No, you wouldn't. That's correct.
I mean, they're usually they're fast.
That's correct. Fast and also pretty skilled in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a game that Glasgow normally will win because Glasgow has speed and size. But but the Russellville-Glasgow game normally would have been a really good game.
Oh, yeah.
But not this year.
No, not this year.
And I think Mitchell only carried it 4 times. He only carried it 4 times for like 70 yards, and so they pretty much gave him a kind of a break, which is probably good. It's a long season.
Yeah,
and a lot of kids got action, so maybe that's good. I mean, the quarterback,
Tanner Abernathy,
backup quarterback.
Oh yeah.
Got
John Myers.
Yes, he got some work, which is good, and I think they had like 4 running backs that got a lot of action. So maybe, for some of the young players that they're trying to figure out the roles or give them experience, I'm sure that was a good night for them.
Yeah, and the thing about this season for Glasgow is they play Monroe County. They host Monroe County this Friday. Now, I will tell you this. Monroe played Hart in that first game at the Trojan Trail Turf War Friday night, which is where Barren played Woodford.
About a 3-hour game, too.
Yeah, and for the first... I would say for the first half, I mean, Monroe, actually for the first quarter, Monroe struggled. And then the second quarter, they figured some things out. But they finally just took that game over in the fourth quarter. And we're going back to talking about a team that's trying to build its identity. I mean, Monroe's usually a pretty good football program, but their numbers are down. You can tell that, their overall speed and talent does not look like Monroe County you're used to seeing. But they got some guys who apparently figured it out, at least mental toughness-wise, as that game went on against Hart County.
Well, they needed to win.
They did.
Yeah, it was ugly, but they got it. Yeah. And they needed to win, especially after losing, getting shut out the first game.
Yeah.
Lost another player, though. I don't know how long he's out. The tailback, Georgie. Yeah, I mean, he did not play much at all in the second half. He was on the sideline without his pads on.
Yeah.
I don't know how long. He may be back this week. I don't know. I think he's a really important player for him.
Yes.
Punt and returner, kickoff returner, tailback.
Yeah.
Play some defense.
Did he have an interception in that game?
Yeah.
too?
I mean, he's really, really important.
Yeah, he's all over the place.
So I hope he gets back because he's a good football player. Yeah. If they lose him, I think that's a tough loss.
Well, and I will say this too: as the game went along, Pettit, the quarterback, looked like he got more comfortable and played pretty well, I thought, in the second half.
Yes, yeah.
And those things are critical because going back to Glasgow, I mean they need Monroe on their schedule to be a good test for them.
They do. They're going to keep that game. They should.
Yeah, they should. And I think, but right now I think Glasgow's probably more talented than Monroe, and they probably have a pretty good advantage against them.
Yeah, I think it's an understatement.
Yeah. But, I mean, hopefully what comes out of it is Monroe, look, Billy Joe Murphy would tell you that he believes his team can win that game. I would say you don't play it unless you do believe your team can win that game.
True, he should say that.
But I would also say that he's realistic and he knows that his team's talent-wise is outmatched.
He should say that. But he's also smart and he also knows it'll take a lot of things have to go their way.
Yeah.
Because I'll just say I'm neutral, and I would think Glasgow's probably a 28-point favorite.
Yeah, that's what I would guess too, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it should be an interesting game, in terms of what Monroe takes from the Hart County game, what they've improved on. Hopefully, like you said, Brooks is back. That'll certainly make it a more competitive game.
Yes.
And then the Scotties are going to have to work on that balance. I mean, they didn't have to work on a whole lot against Russellville, but they will need to against Monroe, and they need to work on those things in the games coming up before they play South Warren.
And it looks like their new district is not going to be an issue for them, except for Taylor. I think Taylor's really good.
Yeah, they look good.
Taylor beat LaRue about like Glasgow beat LaRue.
I looked at that score. I was curious to see how that panned out.
And just from what I remember of Taylor last year, it was and their skilled players are back. Athletically, it's the most athletic Taylor County team I can remember.
Yeah, and also about that district. So Hart County's in that district.
Yeah, I don't think they can handle Glasgow.
No, Casey County's in that district. They look like the Casey County of old, not the new. And then Adair County's in that district. I guess we shall see how they look.
Right.
So I mean, it looks like a two-horse race in that particular district. And when you look down the schedule, you're going to look at that Glasgow-Taylor County game probably and circle and say, hey, there's the district title on the line right there. Regular season.
And it's home.
Yep, and it's at home. This is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back to talk about missing officials.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, there was an interesting outcome Friday night that involved two football teams not getting to play a game because there were no officials for the games. Todd County Central drove to Fort Knox. When they got there were no officials. Apparently no officials showed up. I don't know what the full story is on that other than they ended up not playing the game, and I don't know, if that works out as a forfeit because the home team didn't provide officials or whatever, but there were two things that kind of struck me about it when I saw it. One was who's responsible for making sure you have officials, the first thing. And the other thing was, we had Larry Hammer in here last year talking about basically there's a shortage of officials for all sports. But one of the things we talked about is apparently it's particularly bad in the 5th region right now. We talked about it in connection with basketball. But, I mean, it takes more people to field it takes, 5 officials for a football game. And so that also struck me as I was like, I wonder if they have a shortage of officials and they're having a hard time getting them to places or that kind of thing. I don't know the answer to that. But I thought you could kind of help at least provide some insight into the process for how you get officials to sporting events.
Well, first of all, football is different than basketball. It's not by region. Yeah, there's not a 4th region football association or a 5th region. There's not like 16 football regions. It's totally different. There are associations.
Okay.
And we're not in the one with Barren and Glasgow is in with all the Warren County schools, Franklin, I think Evanston maybe, things like that. And it's Chris Fields, who's the basketball official, is the assigning secretary for us.
Okay.
And what you do is I'm pretty sure it's the home team will send a list of your home schedule that way.
Yeah.
And
to the assigning secretary.
To the assigning secretary, and he assigns a team of officials to show up.
Right. And usually
there's also a computer form. It's called an arbiter.
Okay.
Where you can go and you can check to see your game officials and so forth.
Right.
Now, if you're not in your association or your region, you won't see that.
Yeah. And Todd County and Fort Knox are probably not in the same association.
I guarantee you they're not.
Yeah.
I guarantee you they're not. So it's I don't know if Fort Knox didn't turn it in, or the assigning secretary didn't do it. It's one of the two. I'm leaning toward it was maybe more Fort Knox in a sense, because they should have. I know how Warren does it. He's in contact with officials beforehand because he tells them where to go, where you're dressing, and so forth.
Yeah.
And I would have thought Fort Knox would have probably been in contact with the officials about, game times at 7, and you'll be dressing in this area, and I'll meet you there. Blah blah blah. I would think.
Now that is on the athletic director, not the football coach, right?
The football coaches have nothing to do with it.
I mean, they just show up and coach their team and hope they have officials, I guess.
That's correct, unless the AD is the football coach.
Yeah.
Now it's possible. No, I don't think it's possible. I think it's probably more on the home school than anything else, because I would think the assigning secretary would have called if they had trouble. They wouldn't call after the fact if he couldn't get officials.
Right. Yeah.
So evidently the assigning secretary did not know anything.
Yeah.
Because that's a weird one right there.
Well, and the other thing about football that's also different, I guess, than basketball is you actually have crews of officials.
Crews, yeah.
So I mean, you'll have basically the same 5 officials at whatever game you're going to see.
Right, and at times you can, if somebody can't be there or whatever, you can fill in.
Yeah, you might have substitutions, but usually you got the head guy. And
Fort Knox they're in whatever association at E-Town.
Yeah,
and I'm quite confident there's probably enough officials in the E-Town area. Now listen, with Central Hardin playing and John Hardin, North Hardin, Todd Central and Fort Knox is probably not drawing a A-rated crew.
Right.
But they would draw a crew. They're going to get somebody.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
My guess, it's probably the home team didn't turn the paperwork in. That's my guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, now, so the other thing that I don't know the outcome of this is how they're going to work that out in terms of are they going to – because we had a similar situation a couple of years ago where a game did not have officials, but they actually knew ahead of time and they had to reschedule that game.
There'd be two choices. A, do they have a bye week that coincides?
Yep.
B, would they be willing to play Monday of this week?
Yeah.
And then turn around and play Friday. Mm-hmm. Or C, just don't play.
Yeah. Yeah, and
if Side Central drove that far, that's a pretty good haul. I don't know if they're willing to go back or not.
Well, and if you were the Todd Central AD or coach, I mean, would you say, look, I think we've earned the forfeit win out of this because
is it I don't know if it's a forfeit win.
Well, that's
the game never started. I mean, both teams were there willing to play.
Yeah,
we just didn't have officials, so I don't know. I doubt if it goes as a forfeit.
Yeah, so basically they just has missed the game then in the schedule.
That's correct.
Well, I saw it, and I'm going to follow up with it, and then next week, if I find out any more, we may come back and revisit some of the outcome of this, because going back to, like I said, we had Larry Hammer in here last year talking about the fact that they need officials. I mean, they're begging for officials before every school year because the numbers are down and people are retiring,
right,
and they're having a hard time filling the slots.
I can promise you it wasn't Todd Central's fault. Because I never, in one time as coaching basketball, did I ever call the opposing team to make sure they're the officials that were there. We would cross-reference sometimes our schedule, just send an email or before there was emails, we used to send our schedule and highlight it to make sure everybody got it, and they'd send us one back, and so we'd always cross-reference that. Where I never ever called to ask, do you have the officials there?
It's kind of a thing you think is a given.
That is clearly the home team's. Now the home team doesn't hire them; they pay them though.
Yeah,
but it's assigned by a signing secretary, and they write the checks. Now that's the other odd thing. I don't know if Fort Knox. Clearly, Fort Knox, the coaching staff and everybody. What's confusing to me, I would assume the AD would be there because they've got to get everything. And I assume that they'd written the checks out because you give you have to have the officials sign forms where you send them the money and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's the confusing part.
There is a lot of the ball dropping beyond just the fact that they didn't get to play the game, and there's a lot of pre-work done, I would guess.
Yeah, because
check requests.
I know the AD was there. That's the one thing you don't miss is in administration is it's all hands on deck for these football games. There's a lot of manpower.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
it was not Army precision. Let me put it that way.
No, not at all.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, we're back. It's football season, and every way the NFL kicks off on Thursday night. The fantasy drafts are going on, being done, been done, whatever. And one of the questions I want to ask you as a fantasy football person that you are, you've mentioned before that who you would pick depends on what kind of league it is, and one of my curiosities is about how many different kinds of leagues you think there are.
Ton.
Is there one that you think is the most popular one for people to do?
There's just so many. There's ones that are called keeper leagues. There's ones that, but most of it just involves how you score it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You give points for yardage and reception, or just touchdowns and things like that. So it really, and some leagues give less points to quarterbacks because quarterbacks can dominate leagues. So it kind of depends. Also depends on how many players you have in your league.
Yeah,
12 and 14 man. It's tough to get a real solid team than say 8 or 10.
Yeah, how many people are in the league that you do?
Got one with 10 and one with 12.
Okay. That's not bad numbers.
No,
I've done it with. I think there were 12 of us in the league, and that worked out pretty well. But you're right. Whenever you got down to drafting that number 3 receiver, you're like, I don't even know who that guy is.
12-man league, it gets tough. You're right.
So, are there particular players this NFL season you're really looking for that you're interested in to see how they do?
I'd just adjust. Patrick Mahomes in a quarterback-friendly league is by far the best player. A quarterback-friendly, most fantasy drafts are geared more to running backs. They're weighted, and that would be Barkley and
Ezekiel Elliott maybe
if he comes back. Kamara of New Orleans is a great player.
That's right, because he gets points in every way.
That's correct, and Christian McCaffrey's really valuable in those leads. Yeah. So it just depends on, like I said, how it's drafted. Running backs are a premium in most fantasy. Yeah, most of them.
So, outside of just fantasy football, this NFL season, are there particular players you're excited about watching?
Just team. I think New England's going to be there again. I think it's fascinating. 42 years old quarterback. I just love their system. Yeah, with Belichick. I think Dallas and Philadelphia are going to be really good in the NFC East. Yeah, in the NFC. And anytime the Cowboys are good, That's all right. They bring something.
So far, my favorite thing about the Patriots and watching the preseason. By the way, Jarrett Stidham just basically had a great preseason.
They cut the backup quarterback. He is their backup quarterback.
Yeah. But my favorite thing is whenever they line up in things like Power I and stuff like that, they just run it downhill. Yeah. And it's the NFL, and you're supposed to be trying to trick people. Well, they're just going to smash you in the mouth, basically like we saw in the Super Bowl.
The Patriots win in every different way known to man.
Yeah.
They can run over you, or they can throw it 60 times a game. And the beauty of New England, you don't know what they're going to do. They're like a chameleon. They right. Change all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a fascinating NFL season, I think. There are going to be some great teams.
Opens up Thursday, and then next Sunday is everybody else plays.
Yep. Looking forward to it. Well, football season is here, and the Brown Sports Bag will be back next week to talk about more of that and more of everything else here on ESPN 1230 AM in Glasgow.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
This is WCDS Glasgow, ESPN Radio 1230, your total sports leader.